everyone, welcome to another episode of Tea Time with Tommy, the pro wrestling podcast with Tommy, NORBZ, and me, Brittany. And on this episode, we have a very special guest, Molly Spartan. Welcome to the show.
Ooh, hi everybody.
I'd like to first say I love how how much volume your hair has right now. So I just have can you give us advice of how we can get hair like yours and big and fluffy?
Very voluptuous, Molly.
It's a lot of stern talkings to, like just looking at my hair in the mirror and telling it that it's going to do as it's told. Like my hair gets a lot of comments. It's usually big and wild while in the ring as well. And somebody once described it as that it's got more selling power than Shawn Michaels, is what somebody once described my hair as.
I agree. I agree with that.
It's definitely... I'd like to think I have good hair for the business.
Very lovely.
Very lovely. So I guess my first question for you is, what was your journey like becoming a professional wrestler? Like, what was it from maybe what inspired you to where you are now?
So my journey is very different compared to the majority of people. The majority of people, it's sort of the idea of like, they watched it when they were young and then they found a school, or they somehow started, especially in America, like they did wrestling at school and stuff like that, but it doesn't really happen. And in the UK, if you're a wrestling fan, you are dedicated, because like you don't have the luxury of watching pay-per-views or anything like that at 7 p.m. at night. Like Raw starts at 1 a.m. here. AEW starts at 1 a.m. here. If you want to watch it live, you're up at 1 a.m. until it finishes. Pay-per-views, like there's many a times where there's been a pay-per-view on, especially WrestleMania in Glasgow here, where you'd watch it at what started 1 a.m. and you'd be spilling out in the streets at like 6 a.m. to go home and try and start your day. But like everybody, like I watched it when I was a kid. The first sort of inclination of introduction into wrestling was Bill Goldberg screaming in the television. Like when I was wee here, there's a channel. So growing up, we used to have these little cable boxes, and on channel 22 was Cartoon Network. And I am the biggest Powerpuff Girls fan you will ever meet. Like I can tell you who the first villain in the first episode was and quotes, and I'm a bit of a freak when it comes to that sort of thing. But so channel 22 is Cartoon Network, and on a Friday night, it would change at 9 o'clock to channel TNT, which of course had WCW. And I remember one night sitting on my kitchen table and watching Cartoon Network, and the Powerpuff Girls were coming on, and I was pure excited. And the channel changed rapidly, and it changed from like Buttercup and Blossom and all that to Bill Goldberg screaming down a television, and I was like, and fell off my kitchen table. And then was like, what is this? And that sort of introduced me to wrestling. And from then, like I watched it, and it was that sort of weird feeling. And I'm sure there's a lot of girls now can relate, but obviously at that time, like there wasn't girls in wrestling that were my size. There just wasn't. Like I'm not the biggest girl out there, but I'm also not by any stretch of the imagination the smallest female out there. And so for a long time, I just always assumed that me being a wrestler wasn't really viable, especially being Scottish, because really the only other bigger female that I'd seen sort of thing that was quite prominent was somebody like Bull Nakano with Alondra Blaze and stuff like that, but she was Japanese, so it was that kind of, is it okay because she's Japanese? And there's this whole, especially in that era of wrestling, it was very much about character and gimmicks and what they could bring to the table, and I just assumed I was this white Scottish lassie that, I was never to be a wrestler. So instead I decided, right, well, I wanted to work in wrestling, so I studied television at university. Like I went and looked in the ways of how I could be part of the production side of things, how could I put together a show, how can I be part of the creative process, because I always watch wrestling and think, it'd have been better if he hit him instead, or if they'd said this, or if they'd done that. And I never really seen myself as the wrestler because there was nobody that I could relate to. There was nobody that I felt like I could see myself. And apart from like Chyna, but Chyna's my girl. Oh, I love watching her back now and stuff like that, but like there wasn't really anybody that I related to regarding my size and my physique and stuff like that. So yeah, so I studied university, I've got my Bachelor of Honours in television production and stuff like that, and in doing so I ended up coming across a promotion called ICW. And it ended up being, I was doing a show on a stand-up comedy club here in Scotland. Ended up speaking to a guy called Billy Kirkwood, who is a colour commentator for ICW. Became friends with him, and he'd sort of said, look, you should come and see this show in Glasgow. It's like ECW, you'll love it, and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I'll come. Found this, ended up speaking to the promoter, Mark Dallas, and basically said to him, look, at my university, I have access to cameras and lighting and things like that. I can get you a free camera. I can get you an extra camera for your shows. Just let me do it as a work placement and I'll come and work at your shows. And that could be, because that was an element for my course that I needed to do a placement for work, I'll do it at ICW. And he was like, yeah, sure, cool. You're going to give me a free camera. You like wrestling. You understand what this is about. Cool, no bother. So I ended up doing that. And once I'd finished university, I never left. So for about 5 years, I was backstage. I filmed all promos. I was helping guys sort of find their voice and girls find their voice, and sort of helped in that sort of sense. But then there was one of the guys that sort of started talking about how they wanted to coach. They desperately wanted to coach. There was 2 predominant schools here in Glasgow. And he was worried that if he went to one, he'd upset the other. But he also had these ideas for coaching and teaching wrestling, how he thought it should be taught, which was, at the time, Wolfgang, who was a friend of mine, who is now my husband. At the time, we were just friends. And at that point, as an encouraging friend, I said, okay, I'm student number 1. I'll be student number 1, therefore you've passed that hurdle. All you need to do now is find the rest. Find your school, find the guys you want to coach with and be your crew, and I'm student number 1. And he was like, okay. And then a year after that conversation, GPWA opened, and it was Wolfgang, BT Gunn, Red Lightning, Jack Jester and Lionheart, who are all and were all massive names in the sort of the British scene, and especially the Glasgow scene at the time with ICW. So I started training there, and at first I started training because I thought it's the only aspect of wrestling that I didn't know. I knew how the ring went up, I knew how the shows were put together, I knew how to film them, I knew the camera angles, I knew the lighting, I knew all that, but I didn't know what happened in between those ropes. So I thought, right, I'll learn it from a different perspective. I'll try and see like how the motion works. Is that going to make the production of it better? Because I'm going to understand things a lot better. And in doing so, I sort of discovered that I could do this. And at that time, there was like Viper or Piper Niven, who's now on NXT UK, like who's become a dear friend. She was sort of killing it in Japan and was coming about and was wrestling all over the world, and she was doing it like being herself. Like she wasn't desperately trying to crash diet to be like someone that she wasn't, and she was just fully embracing the size she was and who she was, and that ended up resonating. And then it was sort of that sort of watching her and her completely dominating it and killing it and people loving it, was going, right, I can be me. I can be the size I am. I could get in better shape, but that's not a bad thing, kind of thing. If it's to keep myself healthy and better myself, that's okay. But I don't need to basically half the size I am in order to be accepted as a wrestler. And it was sort of that weird sort of notion of like, I've always wanted to do this, like that acceptance of like I can be me and I can train and I can be good. I I can do this. I can be as tough and scary as any guy. And in all honesty, like the coaches that were there, like that are there and were there, were great because they didn't just mollycoddle me and didn't make me feel like, oh, you're a girl, so you stand over here. They were like, no, get in, go. Like, it's your turn to clothesline everybody, and I'm cool, no bother. So yeah, it was a weird sort of thing from going from thinking I'm going to be useless at this, but it's a learning experience, to this is what I've always wanted to do, but never fully accepted it until there was people behind you to go, you can do this, like, and you can do it to a level where people will enjoy and accept you, and it's not just going to be like, oh, she needs to lose some weight or anything like that. Those self-doubts in my head were gone because I was like, sack everybody else. I can do this and people can enjoy it.
That is excellent.
Wow.
Sorry, that was long and rough.
No, no, thank you.
Yeah.
When I try and explain to people, like, no, like, I started, like, I've got a degree because of wrestling. Like, for 2 years, genuinely for 2 years, every Tuesday morning, I would hire a room in my university and watch Raw and take notes. And folk would come in and be like, should you be doing this? And I was like, yes, it's research, thank you very much. Like, oh, okay. But there was other people that clocked in, so like folk would sneak in with snacks and be like, yeah, we're doing research too. Like, are you in the television class? No, but it's research. And I'm like, get out. But yeah, so like, from going from complete self-doubt and like, this is how you have to look to be a female wrestler, to going, no, I don't. No, I don't. I can be whatever I want to be and still be a wrestler. If I can go, then you're a wrestler. It doesn't matter what size. As long as you're fit enough and able enough and have the right mindset, then you're fine.
Wow. Molly, thank you so much for sharing that. It's definitely, for us three and the viewers, we'll definitely be inspired by that, because we all, like, you know, like, we all start from that situation where people, you know, dealt, and your story is amazing. So thank you for sharing that story with us. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question to ask. You know, all of us have favorite wrestlers growing up in the past. You mentioned Goldberg. Who were your favorite wrestlers growing up?
So the weird thing is, I Goldberg has a very, like, a place in my heart, but he's not my favorite wrestler. You know what I mean? Like, so like my poster boy was Edge. Was it like, he just was
Canadian? Yes,
right. Poster boy was
Toronto.
Edge. Love Chyna because she was Chyna, for God's sake. It's like, the only thing is, like, I love the run with DX, but her stuff with Guerrero is just great. Like, it is, like, Mamacita is just the best. I, like, absolutely love Chyna. So, like, but I also love guys like Piper. I'm a sucker for a guy with a good promo and a girl with a good promo. If you can talk the talk, there's just something a bit more alluring to you than being able to fight. Like, it's the reason why guys, like, even outside of wrestling, guys like Conor McGregor is big and is as hot as he is, and he's wrestling tonight.
Yeah, he's fighting Dustin Poirier. Yeah, big fight.
But really, we're all watching it because we're watching the lead up to it. The fight's the end, but really we're all still watching it because he's running his mouth, and we want to see what he says next and what he does next. And it's this exact same translated into wrestling. And I mean, in all honesty, he's ripped everybody off in wrestling. There's videos of him walking up hallways like Vince McMahon. Like, McGregor is highly influenced by wrestling, and so's a lot of things. But yeah, for me, my poster boy was Edge. Love Chyna. Like, I'd say there too, you know, and Piper's a massive influence, but that's just, at that time, I don't think he was the biggest guy, but he definitely was somebody you didn't mess with because he could talk the talk. There's something a bit sketchy about a guy that goes, I'm just going to batter you, and you go, are you? Okay. But yeah, I'm a sucker for a guy that can talk. But I'd say like those were highly influential.
Real quickly, sorry to, I'll give it to Norris, but I see Connor's getting a little soft, Molly. Have you seen his press conferences? He's getting really nice with people now. So I don't know what's going on with that.
I think that's a mind game.
I
think that's heavy a mind game.
Oh,
He'd be nice. Yeah, of course, be nice. Yeah.
That's true.
Nice. Like, I think he's psychologically, like, he's good, but it depends on who he's talking to. If you look at some of the best heels in the business, so guys like Flair and guys like DiBiase, for example, were always nice to the women. They were really nice to women. Didn't matter. They were nice to women because they were the heels. And there was part of you that what they being nice and getting the women upset the men because they're like, but they're dicks. They shouldn't be getting them. Like, they shouldn't be getting female attention. It's that kind of sort of playing of sort of that kind of aspect of it. So yeah, of course he's going to be nice to the press because he wants the press to cover him and side with him. So yeah, it's all psychological. It's definitely psychological.
No, good point.
Yeah, for sure. McGregor's a very methodical individual. Like he has a plan for whenever he gets out there. You know, he's a tremendous competitor for sure.
Look at this way. Like, there was a video of him signing posters for this fight with his son, and his son's signing the posters too and giving a wee squiggle. Like,
nice.
That's melt your heart. Oh, isn't that sweet? It's Conor McGregor. He could literally run at you, jump, and smash all your teeth out with one knee. But we're all going, oh, isn't that sweet? You're like, it's a very psychological game with him. And most fighting is, and so is wrestling.
Good point.
Well, yeah, I mean, McGregor could be a role model to some. And speaking of that, I'm with women's wrestlers being role models for the most part, and I'm sure you're one of them. Telling us your journey to becoming a wrestler. Speaking of role models, how important is that for future women's wrestling, especially in Europe and in your hometown of Glasgow, Scotland?
I mean, it's crucial. Like, it is. Like, the fact that even if you take me, for example, for so many years, just not thinking that myself, my physical being, wouldn't be accepted, should never be something that somebody has to think. Like, when I was growing up, my parents never gave any, like, gender roles. Like, my mom tells me a story about a time where she came to get me from, so in Scotland, like, you get a thing called playgroup, then there's nursery, and then you go to school. So I was in playgroup, so I must have been maybe three, and she took me to playgroup, and the teacher pulled my mum aside and was like, yeah, so we had a bit of a thing, and she was like, oh, what happened? And she went, well, the boys were telling her she wasn't allowed to play with them. I was like, huh? So basically what happened was the boys had went to play a game, and I'd went to go play with them, and they'd said, you can't play this because you're a girl. And my answer at 3 was, yeah, I can. And was like, so I'm playing. Because my parents never taught me, like, you can't do this because you're a girl. You can't do this because, like, boys do this and girls do this. Like, that was never anything that sort of was part of me growing up. Like, you can do something because you can do it. If you're strong enough to pick something up, then you can pick it up. It's nothing to do with, you're a girl, so you don't pick up the heavy stuff. Let the boys pick that up. I'll be like, no. And that still happens to this day. Like, I've got friends that find it absolutely hilarious when I'm out lifting boys and taking, like, when we're moving things for shows and stuff, and I've got ring posts over my shoulders and putting them in vans and things like that. And you can see guys that want to be, and I understand there's boys that want to be gentlemanly, but then there's that point where I'm like, no, do not come over and take some heavy item off me while I'm carrying it. If I'm clearly carrying it fine, then I'm carrying it. You go carry something else. So it's never been, for me, it's never been a gender thing. It's never been girls do this and boys do this, ever. So for me, there's this sort of thing where girls need to sort of understand that, like, there shouldn't be these restrictions for females just purely because they're female. Like, I do understand that there's this whole thing, especially with, like, Raw and SmackDown, like, there's the portrayal of, like, men and women shouldn't be fighting, and it's to give this positivity, and I get that there's people that don't like intergender stuff. I do. But for me, if you physically think of it, can you imagine, like, a matchup like Charlotte Flair and Seth Rollins? Physically, there's not much difference. If anything, Charlotte's got more height on the boy. Like, capability in the ring, probably, like, everything in the gym are probably very similar. And the only real defining difference between them is their gender. So for me, I know it's probably it's going to be a long time, and I'll probably be far out the wrestling business before it happens properly. And it's not just some funny skit where Becky Lynch beats up James Ellsworth because there's that clear, like, she's the superior athlete to him, but that there will be a fair competition. And I get I get weight distribution. You're not going to stick in Alexa Bliss in with somebody like Braun Strowman, for example. Like, that's like, you know what I mean? Like, I get that. I get that if there's a weight differential difference, I get that we're trying to convey that this is all, you know, and that's fine. But if there isn't, and there's real beef, and there could be something good there, then why can't a great match happen? Purely because one is a guy and one is a female. And for me, like, most independent female wrestlers, when we're training with guys. Like, there isn't as many females. So if I was to wait for a girl to come into my school, I'd be waiting a long time. We do have women, but we don't have as many. Like, and I've done most of my training with guys. Most of the things that I'm capable of doing, I've hit or tried. I've got a couple of boys that we jokingly call each other our monkeys, because I'm like, yeah, come here. And he's like, oh, great, what am I doing now? But it's the same. He's like, Spartan, come here. Going to lie down. Like, I cool no bother. And it's that sort of way where when it comes to actually training in the independent realm, I know when it comes to NXT and stuff like that, there's the women's class and the guys' classes, and it's all weight divided and stuff like that, which is fine. But in every normal day wrestling schools, yeah, there's a couple of specialised female dojos, and yes, there's a couple of special guys dojos around the world, but the majority of schools are mixed because they have to be, because if they didn't, they just couldn't let women in, you know what I mean? So for me, it's more to do with completely breaking down the idea of gender roles more than anything. So for me, like, I can be the scariest person on a show without a shadow of a doubt, and nobody questions it. Nobody goes, oh, it's because she's a lady. No, it's not. It's because there's plenty of things. She might punch me in the face, and that's good. Like, if that's my job, it's to think if I talk to her, she might break my nose, then fine, that's my job. And if that rolls to a guy, then that's fine, that's his job. But there is this weird sort of thing where I kind of like being the scariest person on the show, because we girls get to see I can be the scary one. Like, I can be the aggressor. I don't have to just be all like, okay, I'll sit here quietly and just accept and tell you what you do. No, like, that's not what's happening. Like, let's think about it this way. The majority of people in the world, if you do something bad, the first thing that goes through your head is, oh God, I hope my mum doesn't find out. Because everybody's slightly scared of their mum. Let's be honest. We're all kind of scared of our mum a bit, because If she finds out, you're like, oh no. But it's the idea of acceptance that women can just do whatever guys can do. And that's what I try to sort of, with my wrestling and with my character and stuff like that, like I don't back down. If a guy shouts at me, I'm over in his face with absolute no fear, because you kind of have to. You kind of have to show no fear to it, because there are people that don't accept, like there's people that don't accept that I'm a wrestler because I'm female. Like they just don't think women should be doing that. But that comes from years of, so I'm saying like gender rolling, like going, women do this and guys do that. And you know what? Like I'm a mean cook in the kitchen. Like I'm a great cook, but that doesn't define me. My partner doesn't define me. I define me and what I choose to do. And if I want to lift heavy weights in the gym, then I'll lift heavy weights in the gym. If I can move the stuff from a show or a ring, then I'll move it. It's like I'm getting into like I feel like I'm going into like a philosophical whirlpool here when I'm talking about it. But I hope you understand what.
Oh, please keep going.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, thank you so much for your inspiring words, Molly. And so we're just gonna wrap it up. Sorry. So we're just gonna wrap it up now. And
I feel like you've asked me 2 questions and I've just babbled. I'm really sorry.
Don't apologize at all. Like
you basically,
so inspiring.
We asked you 2 questions, but you basically answered 5 questions for us. No, it's all good. So just wrapping things up, Molly, what are your thoughts on women's wrestling happening today? Like, I know you've had like very inspiring words for like inspiring a young woman, and that there needs to be a break in gender roles. But like, what are your thoughts on women's wrestling today? And like, what are some of the things you want to see change?
I mean, it's very different, obviously, now than when I was a kid, which is great, because I feel like now the women are, especially in major promotions, like, Christ, you had a women main event WrestleMania. Like, if you told 12-year-old Spartan that, like, she would have been like, nah, okay, whatever. But that was massive. And the fact that there is a progression of it, but it's just if we can't get complacent in it. We need to just keep on striving for not even better, but just proper equality within a show. Like, I'm very glad that, like, here in the UK, like, I know myself have pushed for that and have been able to achieve that in places. Like, there's places where I used to wrestle, well, that would, obviously with the pandemic, I'm not wrestling now, but where I wrestle, where at first when I stepped in, it was very much a case of there was one women's match on the card and there was one girl that came from that school, which is completely fair enough, and I completely understand there's some promotions where that's their working element, but there are places that were able to expand. And one of the places that I worked in was a place in Liverpool where that was the case at first. I had an idea and I basically brass-necked it and went, hi, we've not met, but I've got an idea, and sort of pitched this idea to them. And like 2 years on, there's me, my tag partner, Casey Owens. We made the She-Wolves, which is this female tag team. And we're treated as a tag team. Like, we're not treated as a female tag team. There's also the Medusa Complex, which is a female tag team, but we're treated as a tag team, which is a massive thing. But they've got at least 2 female shows on a card, which, although it doesn't sound like a massive expansion, for over here it is. And for over here it's a case of there will be as many female matches on a card that deemed necessary. You know what I mean? So if the story or the match is required for that show, then that's how it works. It's not to do with you're a girl, you're a boy. It's you're the most interesting thing, you're the most interesting thing, you get on the show. And that's how it should be treated. If our storyline or our performances are the things that are captivating the audience, then yeah, we should be on the show before just some 2 dudes getting on a card kind of thing. And that's to do with everybody sort of stepping up. Like, you've got to, you can't just be complacent anymore. Like, yes, there has been a massive change. Yes, women's wrestling has been given a bigger platform, have been given more eyes to watch. But if we've got those eyes, we need to keep them there. We need to find a way of captivating them and making sure that they don't wander or get happy with where they are, because we should always be striving for better. Because if we don't keep striving for better, those that are against us are going to keep striving for us to either do worse, to be pulled, or even to push for them to be the people that people are watching. And I get it. There's always going to be competition, and that's fine. But yeah, complacency is something that we can't accept. And complacency is something that we need to just get rid of. We can't stop. We've got to keep on trying to strive, to be better, to make sure that one day there won't be any gender roles, because people will want to see that person versus that person rather than just those two guys and those two girls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely.
Sure. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Molly, for joining us on an episode of Tea Time with Tommy. You've really, honestly inspired all of us, and hopefully inspire anyone who's listening. We love your philosophical talks that you went on.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. It inspired
It's incredible.
me.
It's amazing.
It inspired me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for an episode of Tea Time with Tommy, with Tommy, NORBZ, and me, Brittany. See you guys next time.
Thank you, Molly. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Be safe, wear a mask, wash your face, wash your hands, and your face.
I love that.